I don't even know if we're live. There we go. Welcome to another Chaotic Sports live stream where I have someone that's not Angelo. This is Insane Wayne. Yeah. If you guys listen to the podcast, you know Angelo was a little salty. I sent him the link. We'll talk about him in a minute. But this is the Chaotic Sports live stream podcast where we just basically shoot the shit about whatever we want. Today we're gonna talk about a little UFC, some boxing, and then NFL like always. While we were talking about show notes, and I put this in the notes of the video, I did mention that we weren't going to talk NBA today, which is weird. I mean, right in the thick of the season, a lot of news, the Kawhi. I mean, me and Angelo talked about the Kawhi stuff, just too much. So I figured we'd skip it, but you and I think, are going to have a ton of NBA stuff to talk about, especially if we get Angelo on here. The socials are important. The Chaotic Sports, you can find us at Chaotic Sports on Twitter. You can find Angelo where I guess he was worried about flooding the stream with betting stuff. So you can also go to at Chaotic Wagers where Angelo just churns out bets and picks. We'll talk about that in a second. You can go to at Chris Sarda on Twitter to find me. And then Wayne, you could see it right down there under him is on his Twitter is at Never Do I Lose. Go find that guy. Talk crap to him. Talk crap to us at Chaotic Sports. And we're very responsive, very active. So get us up on there. You can also comment. If people start showing up on the live stream, I got their comments here, so we can start talking to them a little bit. Roll through that. So a lot of opportunities. And then we don't only do sports around here. I don't even remember what I was going to call this. I think the publishing company I just made up was called Chaotic Propaganda. I think I owned the URL for that. But I have a channel that's focused on comic books, where I just go way into the weeds on that. I tried to separate that because that's a bunch of videos. Then me and Wayne. On a different channel, which we'll make sure to link here once we start it and tell everyone, we're gonna probably start a movie live stream where we talk about the newest trailers, we react to the trailers, and then just talk about what we watched. Wayne recently watched Zombieland. He didn't like it. I guess I have a different kind of sense of humor because I was laughing the whole way.
No, yeah, definitely. That's a definite.
So I've actually watched a ton of movies lately. Just because I'm watching the kid in the day, and then like in the evening, I'm like, I'm gonna go watch a movie. I watched The Lighthouse. That was a mind fuck. That was just a really strange movie.
I haven't seen that yet. Definitely looking forward to going and check it out.
You want to watch that one?
Absolutely.
I only want you to watch it so we can just get our reactions to it, because it's one of those weirdo artsy movies, but great performances in it. So those are the socials. I'll make sure to put them in the show notes after the show's over. Just get everyone together. I also started, and Angelo doesn't even know about this, so this is just brand new news. I also started a Discord server, a Chaotic Sports Discord server. I don't know if you've ever used Slack at work, Wayne. Have you ever used Slack at work? Something like that. So what it is basically just an internal chat room. I'll make sure I'll send you the link so that you join that. And as we get listeners, as we get people coming at us, talking to us, and by the way, obviously we're like 8 subscribers. We're doing this brand new. So if we start getting listeners, we'll bring them on to the show. I don't care. We just bring them on to the show. So long as everyone's cool.
I'm down for that too.
Yeah. So long as everyone's cool. Go ahead.
I don't know. I'm excited to talk sports, especially combat sports.
Well, we're going to get into it, Wayne. We're going to get into it. Hold on. So the Discord server's up. And before we get into sports, though, I do want to talk about our friend Angelo. I know that you listened to the beginning of the podcast where we talked about these live streams, and we've talked to him separately. And do you feel a hint of jealousy in our friend Angelo that you and I are doing these live streams when for years me and Angelo had been doing podcasts? Do you think that what do you think about that situation?
I think the Angelo that I know is not a jealous man. I think that he appreciates opinions, and he definitely values mine. We talk sports all the time. I think that he just wants to have this special invite. I mean, this is definitely a cool thing we're doing now, the live podcast on YouTube. And I think, he's definitely got some stories to contribute. We'll have to, taper his gambling picks from this particular arena. But
why do we have to taper those?
Oh, just because, we don't want everybody to automatically, lose on some of those picks.
Oh, you're worried. You're worried about people's money. I got you.
Yeah.
Well, if you go, because I don't think he just started Cali Wagers a week or two ago, so I don't think you follow yet. When you go and follow, though, you'll see he keeps a record of his picks and how well he does in like NCAA, how well he does in NFL and NBA and hockey. So I already know where Angelo is actually because I just got the alert. That the Golden Knights are playing. So, we already know Angelo's doing that. Yeah. So anyway, you're funny sometimes because you're ready to go all in on Angelo, but out of nowhere you'll just come to his defense. Like about a year or two ago. Like, I know that Angelo's always said he's like Cleveland and that he's into Cleveland, this and that. But about a year or two ago, me and Tyler recognized that suddenly Angelo was Cleveland crazy. This is probably when the Indians were really on their run. So this is like 3 years ago now. And Tyler put it best. He asked Angelo, and I'm quoting someone. He goes, "Angelo, where'd this Cleveland hard-on come from?" That's what he said. Called it a Cleveland hard-on. And it was true. He had hardly ever talked about Cleveland. He had hardly ever talked about the Indians. We had other friends, baseball friends like Rob, that couldn't tell me Angelo's favorite team. This is 3 years ago now. Obviously, Cleveland's been good, so he's been all on him. But you came to his defense. You go, he's always rep Cleveland. And the truth is that's true, but not like he does when they're winning.
Speaking of which, let's represent right now. Try, baby.
Yeah, that's a Cleveland playoff team. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to move on.
Are we going to talk about Kershaw?
That's the only thing you know. Why are you wearing a shirt of a sport you only watch 2 weeks of? Hey, we're going to transition from Angelo. I was hoping that while we were talking about him, he'd jump on, but he didn't. So we're done with that guy. He didn't even comment or anything. Like this guy talks about how important chaotic sports is to him, and he can't even jump on and comment and talk crap or anything. We're going to transition from Angelo. Now, normally, you'd go to the bigger sport or the bigger headline, which is the NFL, and we're definitely going to talk NFL. I want to talk about the AFC especially because we've skipped the AFC a lot. I mean, the only AFC you and I have talked about has been the Browns. So we are going to get into the AFC. I want to talk about AFC wildcard because that's where the most interesting races are going to happen. But before we get into that, it's been 5 days now since UFC 244. You and I both watched it. It was actually a really, really good card. We're going to start. Yeah, we're going to start from the top. So I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask it in context. Okay. So at the moment that you saw the finish, not how you feel now, not what you read later, at the moment when the doctor came in and stopped the fight, giving Jorge Masvidal a TKO win over Nate Diaz, your reaction at the moment, what was it?
You know what? Being in in boxing.
Should I have prepared you? Should I have prepared you that I was going to ask that question?
No. Being around the fight game, I think, sometimes you have to protect fighters from themselves because a true fighter at heart will want to compete to the very end. And as of late, we've seen a few recent deaths. Rest in peace to those young men for continuing to fight past the level of competition and being competitive. So Diaz is frequent at opening up a cut over his eye, so there's a lot of scar tissue, so it quickly bleeds. So when they stopped it, just based on the fact that being the first 3 rounds, I felt like I didn't see it trending upwards for him finding success in the fight and winning it. Of course, the longer it goes, and if it goes to the ground, there's a chance of a submission. But I feel like on almost all aspects of the fight, Masvidal was dominating from every part of the arena. So I was okay with the fight stoppage. I definitely was.
You were at the moment. You were. We're going to get back into it. We do have a comment from Whiskey Dragonfly. He says, Masvidal would seriously hurt Conor's future pay-per-view drawing power if he beats the shit out of Conor. UFC invested too much into Conor's star power to let Masvidal beat him to death. Masvidal would have TKO'd Nate in the 4th or 5th. Jorge has a higher fighter IQ. So there's 2 points there. So let's talk about what Whiskey Dragonfly, great name by the way, Whiskey Dragonfly.
Oh,
where the hell did you go, Wayne? Whiskey Dragonfly says Masvidal would seriously hurt Conor's future pay-per-view drawing power if he beats the shit out of Conor. So I agree with him, but I also think that Conor's pay-per-view drawing power is already hurt because he's not going to fight for a championship next time. He's got to fight. He's got to find and it may even be Nate Diaz now that they both are coming off losses. He's got to find a money fight that will also sell pay-per-views that isn't for a championship. After that, I think that you can't protect Conor the way you do in boxing. So even though I agree with Whiskey Dragonfly, I don't know that you can protect him. I know that Conor before Jorge will probably want Khabib again anyway. So let's just say he gets Nate. I know Nate is claiming that he's retiring as of today, but who knows if that's true. But let's see he gets Nate. That's a huge pay-per-view event. That's a trilogy. Do you think Conor's going to make the same amount of money? Do you think he's going to want to go after Khabib, or do you think he's going to want to go after Jorge? And then Khabib being closer to his real weight.
I think he'll want to fight Khabib again. He definitely wants that rematch. I think it's something that, essentially he talked a lot of, he wrote a lot of checks that his ass could not cash. And I think, shoot, hold on.
We have some camera technical difficulties with Wayne.
Last time I was just thinking about this. Last time I think I actually had it long way, but oh well.
Well,
it's all good.
Got it? Set that camera up.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, so we agree there. If Whiskey Dragonfly's still on, I'm curious what you think, Whiskey, about Conor actually wanting Khabib. The way I see it is that he'll get, Nate will fight him at 155 because it's a money fight, and I don't think it'll happen on January 18th when he's planning on coming back. So that's a little bit of a thing. But
I think it's going to be Justin Gaethje. I think it's going to be Gaethje, and that would be a problem.
It could be Gaethje. That's a great fight. I think he beats Gaethje, to be honest. It could also be Cowboy. I think he could beat both those guys. So
I think you know what? I think, in my personal opinion, if he got into a stand-up fight, a stand-up bout with and just traded shots with Gaethje, I think Gaethje wins all day. I think
what you just said is not going to happen. He's not going to stand and trade with Gaethje. If you want Gaethje to be undefeated for the rest of his life, you stand and trade with him. Like, Conor's a little bit smarter than that. He's actually a really good striker, right? I mean, his problems have always been when he's gone to the ground, when he's fallen to the ground, right? So you're not going to stand and trade with Gaethje. He's going to get left. He's going to try to get that left in, and he's going to avoid the power shots, which he can do. He's elusive.
But I think Gaethje also is the bigger fighter, and I just see it. I don't see, to be honest, I'm pro-America right now, but I don't see Conor winning either one of those fights. I think that Cowboy would outstrike him, and I think he's just got more heart. If you listen to Khabib, Conor's a tap machine. You're a tap machine. He taps.
Yeah. So I want to get off the Conor. I hate it when we do MMA and it becomes the Conor podcast. So I want to get off of Conor, but Khabib makes everyone give up. He makes everyone hate their life. So that's over. When Conor gets signed and when we know what he's doing and it's not TMZ stuff, we'll get back to Conor. We're going to close the Conor talk.
Tony Ferguson. Shout out to Tony Ferguson, the man who will beat Khabib.
That's going to be. There'll be a lot more talk about that. Let's close out the Connor talk with Whiskey Dragonfly's last comment, and this is the feeling of a lot of people. Connor is a celebrity whore. He will fight whoever the public is interested in at the time. That's true. That's why he gets respect. Not a fan of Connor, but he's a fighting man. That's
even
true.
Even if it's a guy at the bar, even if it's an old guy at the bar.
Old man at the bar. Yeah, but he does want Khabib. And then Gaethje is a terrible stylistic matchup for Connor. I disagree wholeheartedly with that. Connor's management should steer him clear away from Gaethje unless it's a title fight. I disagree with that. You and Whiskey agree. But I think Connor is legit at stand-up. He's less likely to go to the ground, and he's shown what he can do at stand-up. Against everyone from Holloway.
Process of elimination. Just through process of elimination, I think that the only real fight for him would be Khabib. He's going to have to sit around and wait on the sidelines, tweet, and try to draw attention, outside the ring, so he can get attention in the ring. But I think he'll fight Cowboy and lose.
Yeah, I mean, if he loses against Cowboy, that's over. But I don't know. We'll see. He's the same. I mean, Connor's actually that size. So I think he beats Cowboy. Let's go back to 245.
244.
Let's go. Well, we're not finished with Masvidal and Nate Diaz yet. Whiskey Dragonfly, which I think a lot of people think, says Masvidal would have TKO'd him in the 4th or 5th. Jorge has a higher fight IQ. Now, I don't know that would happen. That's an opinion of a lot of people. It's certainly possible because Masvidal was getting off on him. But there's a couple things. One, I believe Nate Diaz when he said he couldn't run, because the way that you stop those body kicks that he was taking is you really up the punch rate, which we've seen. What are you doing, dude? You want to be professional over here, Wayne? Making noise?
Hey, my bad.
You up the punch rate like he normally does. You get a lot more busy. So he's taking these kicks, and then it looked like he was actually trying to save wind. Now I don't know if that's true. I'm just saying that. As far as all the Nate Diaz fights I've ever watched before, compared to what he was doing here, I was like, why aren't you pressing? So we find out that there might be a little bit of a leg injury, and I believe him when he says that, and he couldn't run for 2 weeks. We know Nate and Nick, as much cocaine as they do, they're actually very athletic. They work out, eat clean, and things like that. So I believed him. With that said, even if Nate turned it up, even if Nate was throwing a bunch of punches, even if Nate had even if Nate was controlling fights the way he did, I still think Masvidal would have won the fight. I think Masvidal, just as Whiskey says, I think Masvidal just does have a higher fight IQ.
He's seasoned right now. He's sharp. He's at his prime. As far as fighting is concerned, I think he's honed his craft, and he's at the top of his game right now. So I think he finds success fighting almost anybody. He looks great.
Since he's come back, he looks great. And I mean, this is almost a topic in itself. But in my mind, fight of the year is between him and Israel Adesanya. Who would you give it to? And we don't have to get that deep in it because I want to talk about other fights on 245.
You're looking for fight of the year?
I mean, to me, the only two guys that could really get fight of the year are those two.
Oh, fighter of the year.
Yeah, fighter, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Fight of the year, Israel might have it against Gastelum.
I think you have to give it to Israel because he won the championship and he beat 2 belt holders previously in that division. So I think with him beating Kelvin the way he did, as well as Whitaker, I think, fight of the year, it's an easy decision for me.
That's an easy decision for you. So let me throw this in there. So you're right. So number one, Gastelum was never a belt holder, but he was walking around.
Interim. He held the interim.
No, he didn't. The only time he ever held a belt is when he was walking around with his teammate Cejudo's belt.
So wait a minute. Who was the champion while Whitaker was out? Because Whitaker's been out multiple times for multiple reasons.
Okay, so the fight with him and Gastelum was for the interim belt. That was for the interim belt. And then he won it, and then it was belt versus belt. So Whiskey here, who's watching, says fight of the year is Izzy based on accomplishments. So I get it. So let me just say that I don't necessarily disagree, but I'm going to play devil's advocate. You're right. Accomplishments. Israel won the belt, and Jorge didn't win the belt. Didn't even get to fight for it. But I don't know that that's Adesanya. I don't know that that's Masvidal's fault necessarily. You know. So if you go accomplishments, okay, that's true. But the fact is that, I mean, he went through good fighters at 170. And I know the Askren win looks a little worse now that he lost to Maia.
Yeah.
But I mean, beating Darren Till, I mean, he put Darren Till. He made Darren Till depressed. Darren Till just got out of depression, got his first win on that card. You know,
that's true. Yeah. Well, I will say this though. I mean, I'm upset about the now hindsight. I'm upset about Ben Askren's win over Robbie Lawler. That's not something that that needs to be vindicated.
Yeah, we'll see what Ben Askren does. But you know, if you tell me that you come back and in the year you beat, so from March 2009, so 3 fights from March to November. You knock out Darren Till, who's a big fighter, who he's huge at Masvidal's weight class. You beat the record, the all-time record for fastest knockout about Ben Askren. You basically figure out the one hole in Ben Askren's. Well, there's plenty of holes, but the one thing you could do, and you do it in 5 seconds, and then you stop Nate Diaz. You know, Nate Diaz, the only other time he's been stopped in the UFC was against Stephen Thompson. He's never been stopped other than that in the UFC. So when you do all that, I mean, to me, you got a good argument. When you say accomplishments, then I get it. I'm on your side. Whiskey says Izzy got fast-tracked to the title, 5 MMA fights in 16 months. That's incredible. That's true, too. So I'm not going to deny that. I mean, it could be either or to me. I think that that's close enough that if one wins it and the other doesn't, it's not that big a deal. But I just wanted to real quick go over fight of the year because Masvidal is definitely not fighting again. He wants to heal his hand. He probably won't see him until April or May. Okay, let's go to the next fight. We already talked a little bit about this, and this is an interesting fight because there's 2 reasons this is interesting. These are 2 former welterweights that they were having trouble making weight and they were losing. In the case of Till, he was losing outright, and Gastelum actually missed weight a couple times. So these are both guys that were once able to make 170. They had to go to 180. Gastelum has had, up to the last 2 fights, a really good record as a middleweight. The only person he lost against at middleweight, ironically, was oh man, his name slips my mind. The All-American that you hate. Why can't I remember his name?
Oh, don't say Chris Weidman.
Yeah, that was his only loss at middleweight. So when he came to middleweight, he had
tell Chris Weidman I'll fight him. I'll get down and fight.
So that's literally Chris Weidman's only win in like 3 years. It's going on 3 years, I think, for that. But so basically, and that was a close fight, right? So basically, Gastelum looked really good. Had maybe the fight of the year against Adesanya, and then now he went up against Darren Till. So two welterweights that had to move up. Gastelum coming off a loss for what was basically for the title, and Darren Till, someone who was a little bit like Adesanya, to be honest. At 170, he was being basically fast tracked to the title after that Cowboy win. After knocking out Cowboy, he really got on everyone's radar, and then he had some. I'm not going to say he had some bad luck. He ran into he ran into Masvidal's fist, and then he also took an L against Tyron Woodley. So what do you think about that fight, Darren Till versus Gastelum? That was actually really close. That was a fight fans fight because I think a lot of people maybe thought nothing much happened. But when I don't know who won, when I'm like, who won that fight at the end, and then it turns out to be a split decision, to me, that's a good contest.
I think that Darren Till was the busier, active fighter, and he definitely controlled the pace of the fight throughout the fight. Okay. I think if you were to be honest, in my opinion, I was kind of shocked at the performance of Gastelum. I was actually, he looked kind of like a shell of himself to me, at least. I thought I thought he was much more of an aggressive fighter, especially if you were, you know, to rewind back to him and Israel Adesanya's fight. He was definitely much more of an aggressor. So, and that's the thing, is a lot of people, you know, maybe he took a lot of damage in that fight, and maybe that, you know, made him a little bit more gun shy as far as throwing his hands and being a little bit more aggressive, getting in the pocket, kind of going toe to toe. Because I think with Till being the taller fighter, I think the only way for him to really find success is closing that distance, grappling, kicking, you know, body shots. I think that was the best way for him to find success in that fight. And I didn't see any of that taking place from him.
I think that's Gastelum's. I think that's typically what Gastelum needs to do in most cases, that he's going to be fighting a taller fighter. He's a little bit bigger.
Right.
What you said interested me. What you said interested me, and I'll let you continue. But
go ahead.
You said he looked like a shell of himself, and sometimes that happens when you take a beating. And not that Israel didn't take a beating either. He took a beating too, right? But maybe that fight was a little too close. Maybe he needed a little more rest. Gastelum's a fighter in his heart and mind. So when you said he looked like a shell of himself, I thought the fight was very close. That split decision is probably where I was thinking. But it's interesting that you said he was a shell of a fighter, because he had just basically had the fight of the year, or one of the fights of the year, against Adesanya. So maybe he didn't, somewhere in the back of his mind, he didn't want to get into that same kind of battle with someone like Darren Till.
I feel like the name of the game is prize fighting. And, if the prize is right, these guys will fight. They'll risk injuries or, not healing up and just to get the bag. So I get it. I definitely understand.
So,
and Darren Till, kudos to him, Darren Till, because that was not an easy opponent. And coming back from 2 knockouts, good for him.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. Whiskey's parlaying a question here, and I just want to bring that up. Let's see. So he goes, and I think we agree with this. So it actually was a big gamble for Till to move up to 185 and fight someone like Gastelum, which essentially was the best fight he could take at 185, the hardest fighter, a guy that was, at moments he could have even beat Adesanya. So he according to Whiskey, he says Till's gamble paid off. Now that he beat the former 185 title contender, where does the UFC match Till next? A light touch or straight to style bender? Now, the only problem with that comment is he goes from a light touch to straight to style bender, and I don't have the schedule in front. I mean, probably not. Who else
They'll probably have him fight. They'll probably have him fight somebody, because I think style bender's going to fight Romero.
Yeah, that's a bad fight.
I think it's an easy money title defense for him. It just makes sense. Somebody that'll stand there and let you punch him, and he's willing to take the punch.
Light touch. When he says light touch, and I don't know that this is a light touch, I'm thinking Jared Cannonier would be a good fight if Stylebender goes and fights Romero, like you said. I don't think. Yeah. So I was hoping Cannonier, because Cannonier got out of his fight with Hermanson, who Hermanson was a guy I really liked, but Cannonier beat him. So he doesn't look like he has anything scheduled yet. So when Whiskey says light touch, I'd hate to say it because Cannonier is a good fighter. But that might be the best fight for him if Israel is going to go fight Romero, which it looks like is going to happen. So Jared Cannonier versus Till, that's a good fight. Bigger, stronger guys, and then winner gets the winner of Romero and Adesanya. I really want to talk about Romero and Adesanya, but we can't. We gotta go on. So I think, did you want to add anything else to that? Because I think everything you said was basically the truth. I think you hit it on that Gastelum didn't look like the Gastelum we thought. But even despite that, it was still a close fight, you know. So
it was.
Yeah.
It was.
So let's go on to another welterweight fight, and this is the, you know, Stephen Thompson. Unfortunately for his, you know, his biggest two fights ever for the championship were some of the most boring fights the UFC's ever put on. But other than that, he's normally in these great fights.
Wow,
And
how silly is that of us not to even mention Wonder Boy? That'd be a great fight, Till versus Wonder Boy.
Well, welterweight. So Till went up to middleweight, and Wonder Boy is welterweight. Yeah. It's weird because that's a I get confused too sometimes. That's a division where they jump back and forth a lot. So
I forgot. I was just thinking about Tyron Woodley beating Till, and then I was like, oh, that'd be a perfect matchup. But yeah, that's true.
And Stephen Thompson, just to throw it out there, I know most of the listeners know if they're watching this, but Stephen Thompson is actually the last Masvidal's last loss a couple of years ago. So Stephen Thompson fought a game Vicente Luque. Luque took a lot of punches here. I mean, and Stephen Thompson's one of the better. I mean, as far as like speed, not knowing where it's come from, being surprised. Stephen Thompson's one of the better strikers in the UFC, let alone that division. And he was,
first of all,
Luque was taking some shots.
I'm gonna be honest. I was sleeping on Wonder Boy. Like I gotta be honest. I didn't realize his skill set standing up was so good. I think he's a very awkward puncher.
That's the biggest thing.
He works angles great. I mean, and the fact that he beat Woodley and then he
didn't beat Woodley.
Are you sure about that?
No. They drew, and then the rematch was also boring, and Woodley won it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. They were two boring fights.
Compete with them is definitely a great thing. And there was somebody else he beat recently that kind of impressed me.
Who Wonder Boy?
Who did he beat recently?
I mean, he took a big loss. He was actually beating up on he wasn't beating up on Anthony Pettis, but he was beating Anthony Pettis, and Anthony Pettis had that crazy Superman punch and knocked him out. But that was weird, I think. Wonder Boy. So Wonder Boy beat Masvidal, and then he had two losses against Till. It was a sort of a lightning strike loss against Pettis. I think that he could beat Pettis, to be honest, if they did a rematch, because it was really just Pettis's athleticism came out of nowhere. He bounced off the cage with a Superman punch and really caught him. But I think Wonder Boy was winning that fight. And then he just beat Vicente Luque. So I mean, he's got a whole bunch of great wins against Rory McDonald. Masvidal was a good win. That sent Masvidal to a Spanish reality TV show essentially. So
that was a draw though. It was like a real close fight though, right? It could have went either way if I recall correctly. It went to
the Masvidal fight. I mean, let me put it this way. I think Stephen Thompson did win that fight, and I haven't watched it in a year or more. But Masvidal's definitely had closer fights than that. So you're thinking of other Masvidal fights where they were split decisions. So
who did Wonder Boy call out, by the way? Do you recall?
I don't know, but let's talk about the actual fight. So Stephen Wonder Boy Thompson, like you said, a lot of angles. Because of those angles, Vicente Luque, who's looked like more of a traditional fighter, someone who can brawl and fight because he took a lot of punches, actually took a ton of punches. I thought the beginning of the fight was pretty close, but I
was just going to say that. That's interesting you said that. I was going to say that. I think Stephen Thompson started out very slow.
Yeah,
the first round. I think actually I would have given it to, definitely
Luque, and it was it was a unanimous decision in the end. Yeah, he did start out slow, but I mean, you could see Wonder Boy too is the way he fights and his stance. He's a guy that needs to look for range, needs to find his range. Once he finds it, you're going to have trouble catching him, and he's going to not have any trouble catching you. So I could see where you sleep on him, but he's had a little string of bad luck. I really like to watch Wonder Boy fight. I really hate to hear him talk, man. He's one of the most annoying dudes to me. Have you seen his YouTube videos where he explains fights?
No, and I will not watch it.
Oh, we're gonna put one on right now. You know what? We'll get kicked off of YouTube if I put him on. But yeah, he's like, you know what he reminds me of, to be honest? You know those like overexcited youth pastors, like at you know, like let's say a Baptist church or a Pentecostal church, you know, like we're gonna get, you know what I mean? Like just corny, just super. So, I hate to talk about my people like this, but just some super corny white shit. Like just calm down a little bit, and not even funny. He's just like cornball. Anyway, that's him. You got anything to add to that fight? I think it was pretty straightforward.
Nah.
You good on that one? The next fight, I think I could legitimately, I don't think he's the best or he's good or he's going to be a champion. I could legitimately say that I think this next guy is probably my favorite fighter, or at least one of them. That's Derek Lewis. And he fought Bwagov Ivanov. So he's a Bulgarian. He fought a dude that until recently I didn't realize was that good.
The Bulgarian took a lot of punches.
Yeah,
like there's a video game I used to play. There's a video game I used to play. Punches and when you give a flurry out, you'd start throwing a lot of shots. It'd be like punches and bunches. That guy was taking shots that I don't think too many individuals on planet Earth could take.
I think you're right. And we've seen Derek Lewis just lay people out, right, with those punches.
As a matter of fact, just to interject here, Derek Lewis, one of the opponents, the Alexander Volkov, is getting ready to fight in UFC 163 against a very controversial, and we'll talk about this later, but Greg Hardy. So that'll be interesting because
wait,
Lewis
what UFC?
did knock him out.
Wait, which UFC?
It's a fight night.
Oh, it's a fight night. Okay, fight night 163.
Yeah,
that'll be a good fight. I mean, Derek Lewis was getting his ass beat in that fight, and
the last
had one of
second.
The coolest. Yeah, one of the. I mean, short of Anderson Silva, short of Anderson Silva versus Chael. Yeah, I want to make sure we get Whiskey here. Whiskey says Wonder Boy's the 170 gatekeeper. I disagree with that. If he can put together some wins, so long as he doesn't fight Woodley, he's not a gatekeeper yet.
It's Whiskey Angelo. Tell the truth. I think it's Angelo. Angelo.
No. This guy's too knowledgeable to be Angelo. He's too knowledgeable to be Angelo. About UFC. Whiskey's gonna listen. This is why I sometimes like to do a UFC show separate from like football and basketball, because Whiskey, you tell me, when we start talking about football, Whiskey's disappearing. I think he already disappeared, in fact. But he says Wonder Boy's the 170 gatekeeper, but he's most definitely championship level. Guys are going to avoid him. So that's true. But if he gets together a bunch of wins and it's not against Woodley, because Woodley's too smart of a fighter, he'll make a fight boring to win. He'll get on with it. But anyway,
Woodley actually recently went over to Thailand to learn some Thai techniques. So he should be a sharper, better fighter too. I feel like all fighters now are going to Thailand.
Yeah. I can't remember, the fighter from my old gym famously did that and beat Anders, but then he got his ass kicked this last fight. So anyway, so this is a little bit of a Derek Lewis versus Ivanov. It's a little bit of to steal Whiskey's word, a gatekeeper fight. But at the same time, Derek Lewis is always dangerous. And the only thing I want to add to this Derek Lewis fight, and if you have something you can bring it up, is that what I was real impressed with is that he didn't gas as bad as I've seen him gas in the past. So he actually came
fight shape, great fight shape.
Yeah, especially at least for a heavyweight, right? And especially with those blows he was getting through our dude Ivanov, and he kept going. That tires you. And then he was taken down a couple times and was still able to explode up twice. Was getting key locked twice, or Americana, whatever you want to call it, and could explode and get up. He kept throwing the thumbs up. So a lot of credit to him for those things. I don't know. I mean, obviously, I don't think that he could beat Cormier. I definitely don't think he can beat Miocic. But I think he's right among there, and definitely has the power. It's the heavyweight division, so definitely has the power to surprise someone. No one wants to see a rematch of this because it was so boring, but I do, because I don't think it would be boring again if Ngannou and Derek Lewis fought again. But I think Ngannou is waiting for a championship fight. Okay, let's talk we're gonna mix these next two fights because I also want to talk about the prelim fight. It's almost the same thing to me. These two guys, with Kevin Lee having an extra little salt and pepper on it, as far as something interesting to talk about. But Kevin Lee and Corey Anderson are this not like you because you're not athletic at all, but like that. They're that. I'm kidding. I'm fucking. They're that.
I wasn't even gonna give a rebuttal.
So they're a lot like the kind of athletic black guy, like a Tyron Woodley, that build where that they could pick up stuff right away, that they have some natural gifts, all the fast twitch muscles. And I said black guy, but I mean also guys like the Watt brothers, have the same level of athleticism. But there's a lot of those.
You are essentially talking about me. Go figure.
Oh yeah, yeah. They used to call you fast twitch muscle in high school. But you see a lot of these guys that sometimes they'll fall to the wayside for different reasons. Maybe technique, or maybe their athleticism gets them so far, and then there's just 3 or 4 guys higher than them. And two of those guys, and even though they fight very differently, and two guys that I've liked a long time, especially Kevin Lee, are Kevin Lee and Corey Anderson. And both of them, Corey Anderson even more, but both of them have been written off. So Kevin Lee in general was a little bit written off as being a little bit of gatekeeper. And I did what you did. And Corey Anderson, I understand why Corey Anderson had some attitude, because I don't think people knew he was fighting in this fight in general. I think people were just like, this is Johnny Walker's fight. And then after he wins this, he's going to wait for the John Jones fight. And for him to come out, I was so excited. To me, that was a big reaction fight, to see him come out, not wrestle, and just start punching Johnny Walker. What were your initial reactions to that fight? Because for me, it was just a really good feeling, a lot of excitement.
So first of all, I took somebody who is not a UFC fan or doesn't know anything about the fight game to watch, this card. And one of the very first things that this individual said to me was, Johnny Walker, she wanted him to lose because he was so weird in his antics and the way he carried himself. Like, she was like almost kind of creeped out by it. And then, to be honest, I never paid attention to the guy. I just thought he was cheesy. But when she pointed it out, I was just like, yeah, I kind of want this guy to lose too. But overall, I think, there's levels to this competition thing. And I think Johnny Walker quickly found out that, there's much more talented, skilled fighters and experienced fighters that are also hungry and want to eat too. So if you're going to come and challenge, through marketing, if you're going to try to challenge the champion, you better be ready for war for anybody you're fighting moving forward to get there.
I agree with that. Just based on what you say what you just said as a reaction to the Johnny Walker stuff. Whiskey says Wonder Boy is a champion level fighter, which I agree with. But just as a reaction to what you just said, I do think that if you put that fight again next week, I do think that Johnny Walker is a better fighter. I think that he is. And I think you know how we're gonna switch. We're gonna make this an example right now. We're gonna make an example right now, a football example. Like sometimes Belichick will lose a game by a lot. Let's say in the regular season, you'll be like, wow, and everyone lost their bets. Everyone's expecting them to be so good, and then he'll play the Ravens in the postseason, or he'll play Kansas City in the postseason, or something like that, or Peyton. And then he just tears them apart. He just beats up on them. I think that's the situation here, and I think this is good for Johnny Walker. I think that this exposed something like I wanted to call him Cannoneer like an idiot, but like Corey Anderson said, that they noticed that he actually takes some right punches, and that's what Corey Anderson started throwing right punches. Normally he's a wrestler, and I think Johnny Walker is a good enough fighter. He's awkward, so it's okay that the person you were with didn't like him because of the way he was acting, and he's like, he looks like Gumby to me. But the fact is that it works, and he looks great. He's also the Gus Frerotte of the UFC, because in his last fight, he won by knockout. I don't know if you watched this fight, he went down and did the fish, and he injured his leg celebrating.
So, it's called the worm. And secondly,
oh yeah, the worm. Sorry.
Secondly, I think there's a lot of fighters that can find success early on in fighting based on their purely being the more athletic, dominant individual. And I think when you go to that next level of competition for anybody, just you can probably dominate your brothers, but if you actually end up fighting somebody that has some level of skill and has some experience, you'll lose. So I think that's what Johnny Walker experienced, and we'll find out in his next fight what he has to bring to the table as far as in that weight class, and if he's championship caliber ready. One thing you can say about Israel Adesanya, which also would make him the fighter of the year, with each fight he progressively had gotten better. If I see some changes in his game and he progressively gets better, Johnny Walker, then I will say, hey, he's championship caliber. But as of now, I just don't think he was the better fighter.
Well, that night he wasn't, because he got knocked down, he got caught, and he got beat up. But and what you're saying is true on a different level. That's true when you get to a higher level or something like that. That's absolutely true. I'm telling you, Johnny Walker's at that level. He just got caught.
I think you just like the kid.
I don't. I've always rooted against him. I don't like Johnny Walker. I think he's a fool too. I'm saying he's a good fighter. I've watched him come up, and I was halfway excited to see him fight Dominic Reyes, because I don't think either one of them are going to beat John Jones, to be honest. To me, the fight I wanted to see was him versus Dominic Reyes. That would have been the good fight. Or one of those three versus the Polish guy Jan Blachowicz, who people underrate a little bit. So that's really what I wanted to see. The truth is that he's a good fighter. He's very awkward. He's an incredible striker, and he got caught, he got hurt, and he got beat up by a guy that doesn't normally do that. So I think he's smart enough to come back. He also was a long layoff. So what you said is true. I just don't think it's true about Johnny Walker, because
you proved my point, though. In a sense, to me, you proved my point. If you got beat up by a guy who doesn't really beat people up, that should tell you that you're not ready.
Yeah, but there's something else too in that moment, which is what I was trying to talk about at the beginning also, is that like Corey Anderson went in there like a pit bull, like a dog, like insulted also. You know what I mean? Like and Johnny Walker didn't look past him. He wasn't like doing the thing that the kickboxer that just moved up to 205 did, that got knocked down by Bisping. He wasn't doing that thing where he was looking past the guy or anything like that. But the media was like pretending Johnny Walker was going to get this easy fight and move on. And that made a guy like Corey Anderson come out like a pit bull. They saw something that was open for Johnny Walker. He told everyone. So now we'll see, like you said, we'll see if Johnny Walker can fix that. I'm telling you, I've watched the guy fight. I think he's super talented. I think he's a top 3 or 4 fighter in that division. I want to see him fight Dominic Reyes. I'm glad that he had this learning experience, because I definitely think he's better than Corey Anderson on any given day. But on any given day, Corey Anderson's a super athletic, smart guy.
I feel bad for the kid, because if they put him in there with Dominic Reyes, he's going to get knocked out too.
Well, we'll see. I mean, we'll see. Let's get to Kevin Lee, and then we'll end the UFC. We'll actually do some football maybe tomorrow.
Kevin Lee's actually a prime example of how athleticism will only take you so far. Once you get to elite level of competition.
Yeah, he's actually the perfect example, and where I think Kevin Lee's big change, and I'm really excited to see him grow here. And this came from Joe Rogan, actually. I remember listening to the show at the time, but Joe Rogan said, hey, you're like, he didn't call him a poor man's GSP, but, his comparable fighter, not maybe at skill level or accomplishments, his comparable fighter was GSP. And Rogan told him, hey, you should go try to train at TriStar in Montreal. And he did. I think Whiskey is back. Let me see what my man Whiskey's saying. We'll get to your comment about Kevin Lee in a minute, Whiskey. So Kevin Lee went to TriStar, looked incredible in this fight. I'm really excited to see what you actually just said, is what you said, your athleticism brings you so much, but now he's with a coach that has coached that kind of skill, that kind of athleticism, that kind of skill set. He's with the guy that coached arguably the best ever. Let me get to Whiskey's comment here. Kevin Lee was mentally fatigued after his coach, Robert Follis, committed suicide. Robert Follis, by the way, was my coach at Excel for a while, so rest in peace to Robert. Not Extreme Couture, what he did with Kevin Lee. Hopefully, Firas Zahabi can put him back on track. He has the skill set to beat Khabib. I agreed with that whole thing until the skill set to beat Khabib. I don't know about that. You'd have to somehow trick Khabib to keep standing up.
There's only one guy with the skill set to beat Khabib, and that's my boy Tony Boogeyman Ferguson.
We'll probably do a whole hour on that. Maybe Whiskey will get on with us. And then Whiskey says about Reyes, Dominic Reyes has the most complete skill set to give Jones problems. I don't think anyone can give Jones problems. Reyes is cleaner, straight punches, more power, equal clinch game to John. I don't agree with any of that. And his kicking game is on point with John too. I don't agree with any of that. I think John Jones is far above everyone. The only way you're going to beat John Jones is if you get him off of a long layoff after cocaine and he's out for 2 years or something like that. I don't think that I love Dominic Reyes and I want to see him fight a bunch of good fighters. I don't think he beats John Jones.
I think Dominic Reyes has the athleticism to match John Jones's athleticism. Other than that, I don't know. We'll have to see.
I think John Jones could be the heavyweight champion too. So I want him to see all these fights. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like these are stupid fights that, these are more interesting fights than what we've gotten from John Jones during his career. John Jones is basically cleaning out the old guard of 205 for the most part. But I just don't see it. He'd have to break his toe or something like that. So Kevin Lee, I don't think you finished your thoughts.
Kevin Lee looked good, but not to take anything away from it. I'm glad he got a victory because I wanted to see him get a win. But that, for me, it brings into question how good was his opponent. Gregor, to me, I wasn't sure about him. I hadn't watched him fight much, but what I did see is he's a workout warrior. And, being a workout warrior doesn't really make you a fighter. You can learn some skills and step into a ring and maybe beat a few people, but that athleticism and, that gas tank will only go so far.
Well, Gillespie is like a prospect level, so we didn't know. This fight was supposed to be his first test, because while Kevin Lee didn't become what maybe his athleticism would have told us he was gonna be, he's still a guy that was gonna be in that division and in the top 10 for years to come, right? So this was really Gillespie's first test. It just turned out that Kevin Lee went to the next level. So I'm not gonna write off Gillespie yet. That was his real first test against a decent name. And he's fought a lot more than I thought in the UFC. I thought he only had 3 fights, but he's had a few fights in the UFC. So he's put together a bunch of stuff. It's a lot like I would put on this the way you were talking about Johnny Walker. It's your first test. You got a little bit exposed. Let's see how you come back. We won't really know until we see how you come back, right?
Agreed.
He's prospect level. This was supposed to be his first test. Probably would have broke him into the top 10 or something like that. But it just turned out Kevin Lee went to the next level with Firas Zahabi. So anyway, my friend, Whiskey says the Reyes fight IQ is right there with Jones. I don't know about that. Reyes is going to give John Jones the fight of his life. Maybe. I mean, I'd love to see it. We'll see it soon, Whiskey. We'll see it soon.
I think the fight of his life was definitely Gustafsson 1.
Yeah.
Just because that was his first time meeting someone with very similar skill sets. And I think Reyes is heavy-handed, just as athletic, and he has just as much heart. So we'll see. Yeah,
and I can't remember where – I'm not going to look it up. I can't remember where Dominic Reyes trains. But, I mean, the dudes in New Mexico really – I mean, they come with a game plan. So they got the most athletic guy and the best the best fighter to me in history. And then they come with a game plan. They always seem to know that, hey, this left hook is going to win, or we're going to start working the legs. They always seem to they're not like Mayweather. They always go and watch the tape. Gillespie was going to make the U.S. Olympic wrestling team. He has the mental fortitude to come right. I agree with that. He just has to come back and do it again. So we're going to wind it down, Wayne. We're going to wind it down, Wayne. We'll talk the AFC wild card maybe tomorrow. See if you're available. We'll have a clearer picture of the AFC West wild card because as we speak, the Raiders are playing the Chargers. That was good times. We're gonna do probably some more fight previews. Hopefully, Whiskey's on. He's got a lot to add. He actually added a lot, brought a lot of conversation on. So we'll both go and subscribe to his channel too. And thank you guys for watching. Remember, you can find us at Chaotic Sports on Twitter. I am at Chris Sarda on Twitter. Wayne's long-ass Twitter handles right there. Never do I lose with a bunch of underscores. And then check out the podcast where it's normally me and Angelo yapping at each other. He also runs at Chaotic Wagers for anyone on the rewind. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Insane Wayne. Whiskey Dragonfly. Really appreciate your additions. Cleveland, that's the only thing. That's the only thing that's happening to Cleveland, my friend.
Go Cavs.
Okay, see you later. Everyone have a good night.
Peace.
Peace.